Welcome to the Wizard King podcast. This is your host, Zico. Thank you. If this is your first time, welcome. If your second time watching this, because it's the second episode, thank you for coming back and checking me out and listening to the nonsense that I have to say. No, just kidding. Yeah, so I got another exciting episode for you guys here. A couple topics that's been on my mind this week. And actually something that came up during a conversation that I thought about, and something that the country, definitely the country, not only, well, yeah, of course the country, but then also Christendom, I guess, if that's a thing, if that's the right way of saying it. Also something that's suffering in the community of believers that seeped in, and that was actually something that was prophesied in Second Timothy four, chapter 4, I believe. But this is we're gonna start off and we're gonna talk about trust. Trust. Oh boy, the big old scary word, the boogeyman, everything that everybody, like a lot of people, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people is afraid of trust, in a sense. Not really the word, but what it calls them to do, like to trusting in others, um like the famous one of the famous things that I think, well, not famous but popular terms that you hear a lot nowadays here is trust no man, or I have trust issues. And so these are two things, but and there's so many other ways of saying, so many other different variations of saying that, basically. But basically we're in a culture now where trust is given less, and skepticism and all these different things are amplified and focus on uh, self love and all these different things. Which self love in itself, the term is not a bad thing, because when you love yourself, there's a chapter in the 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson that talks about um, treat yourself in a great way, because you treat others in this. You treat others the way you treat yourself. Trust is something that's definitely required and needed for a society to like be great. I mean, if you look at back when the founding fathers of America, when they did the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution was created and drafted, there was they trusted each other, and they put their signatures, like their word meant something. Their signatures on this piece of paper meant something. And because of that, I mean, look at what America has become. 2020, we're in 2022. But look at what America has become, right? Like, this wouldn't have been possible if these crazy kooks back in 1776 didn't trust each other when signing the Declaration of Independence. Then let's take it to like the church, for those that don't believe in God, or you could check out for like a minute. But for those that do, trust is a requirement. Like, all over the scriptures, you'll see God calls us to trust in Him, trust in His Word, trust in those around you that also believe in Him. There's so much different ways. It's like, hey, don't trust in yourself, because inherently when we say we don't trust others, we're like, either we're like saying, oh, I got this, I know everything, or I don't need anybody's help, or you're so fearful of being hurt because you have been hurt in the past, and so now you're like, no, I'm blocked off. And I think now, what I want to do with this is basically, what I want to do with this part of the episode is basically kind of elaborate on the word trust, and look at it in the way, like the correct way it should be applied, the most beneficial way that can be applied, where instead of causing you more harm, then you can take it and understand, okay, this is the correct way that I should apply trust in my life, and this is the direction, so it can lead you to be a healthier version of yourself, and also create an environment because of you now applying it in this way. Also create a healthy environment around you, those around you. You look at the scriptures in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Like love always trust. And that's a hard one for some of us married folk, because marriage is can have its hard times, ups and downs, just like anything hard in life. Marriage is probably one of the toughest things in this life, at times, just because of the trust. And that First Corinthians 13 scripture is, ooh, dagger to the heart. But also, there's other scriptures that talk about this. But not trusting others is 100% way of also becoming isolated, of becoming alone. You could, and then you could become. It leads into bitterness and all these different things, and perception starts to be your perception of others starts to be skewed, because now you're around others less, you're interacting with others less, and now you become more of a skeptic. Now everybody is an enemy, and it just starts to build in all these other things that we wouldn't just naturally think what would come of it, of not trusting somebody, of not trusting anybody. All these other things come with it. It's kind of like a semi truck. Trust is like the semi truck, and then the trailer. There's all these other byproducts. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically so. And those are just some of the things that comes from it. But in that scripture I referenced earlier, the first scripture I referenced was in um actually First Timothy chapter 4. I was totally wrong. Second Timothy chapter 3. And it talks about this. It talks, hey, in verse 2, it says, people will be lovers of themselves, lover of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, blah, 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 blah. But these are all byproducts of the lack of trust. Remember, love always trusts. Yeah, so in Second Timothy chapter 3, it starts that off. People will be lovers of themselves. Easy. And then it goes into lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy. All these different aspects. Some of these aspects are not directly related to not trusting others, but most of these are. It's very hard to trust somebody, to not trust somebody, and then to forgive them. How can you forgive somebody that it's hard? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very hard. And so there's so many reasons why we shouldn't trust others, right? But let's not focus on the reasons why we shouldn't trust. Let's actually focus on why we should trust, because those outweigh, whether you believe me or not, they outweigh the reasons not to trust others. So if you even look at some scientific articles, let's look at some, or not scientific, not all of them are scientific, but there's a couple articles that I want to look at real quick that just talk about the benefits of trust. So even if you're not like you're like, this has nothing to do with me, I don't believe in God anyway, like what is, well, no, people that don't, like, this applies to people whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Like, trust is the foundation. If you go down, if you're a driver, you have your driver license, you stop at a red light, you trust that the person behind you is going to stop at that red light, or you probably wouldn't be driving. Now, are there the one, out of the 99% of driving, does it happen where somebody rear ends another person at a red light, or I parked in a parking lot, whatever it is? Does that happen? Yes, it happens. There's always going to be those exceptions. That's just the way it is. But for the most part, you can trust and believe that just like you're obeying the traffic signal lights, the traffic signs, the law of the road, so is everybody else on the road. Now, if you go to another country, that's a totally different thing. Like, for example, my home country, well, not my home country, I was born here, but my parents' home country, Haiti, The traffic signal is a recommendation. Yeah, but we're not gonna go down into that. Um, but let's look at this first article. This article that I'm gonna post down in the description box. It starts off with the some of the benefits of not of distrusting, the cons or what can happen from distrust. But let's focus on the part where it talks about the benefits of trusting. So it has three different categories it focuses on. There are many benefits, but there are three different categories that they focus on, and that's bonding, changing minds, society. So let's just look at the changing minds part. Let's read that out. Let's read that. Whether you are closely bonded with another person or simply have gained a certain amount of trust, you will find it far easier to influence them and to change their mind. Trust is effectively the gateway to persuasion. If you do not have the trust of the other person, then they will not really listen to you or consider your persuasive arguments, whether you're wrong or right. Now, we're already seeing most people see that are logical or just even tempered and are paying attention that this right here, there's a lack of this right here, the ability to have conversations, to persuade you, to have conversations where you can persuade the other person, possibly with your ideas. Maybe you guys come in not really agreeing on a certain topic, but then you sit down, you talk about that topic, you give your side, they give their side, and then from there on in the conversation, you can find the holes in your belief. You can find you'll find the holes in theirs probably as well, most likely, because you can focus on that. But you can find the holes where you're wrong, where they're right, and then you can actively change your idea, because we're able to, because we're human beings. That's the way God made us. That's the way we're made. If you don't believe in God, we have the ability to change from a persuasive because of facts, and but just because from talking to other people, not yelling, not calling them names, but just talking. This is it. And so how does this lead to a greater society? Well, let's look at what they write here. Society at large also benefits from trust, which is sometimes called social capital. It's very interesting. This article was written back in 2010, but I found it very good, very beneficial. In a healthy financial economy, there is a plenty of cash circulating. In the same way, in a healthy society, there is plenty of trust, and people feel safe and comfortable, even in the company of strangers. You know, with the rise of fear mongering, like, look, there's definitely, especially after the pandemic and like what's happened in different cities. Look at New York, that's a popular one to be talked. It's easy to talk about it because so many people talk about it. Talk about the difference from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. Like the condition of some of the cities and like how there's more homeless and how aggressive and how much of more violence. That's also happening in San Francisco, where I mean people are writing notes on their windshields begging thieves not to break into their car, like hey, or not to bust their windows to get their money. People are leaving their windows down. People that leave the notes are saying, hey, I'm a single parent of 3 4 kids, like I don't have enough money to fix a broke window, please don't smash my window, the doors are open. Like, this is insane, right? This is insane. But if you look at especially the power of media, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the media space, with the ability of YouTube, it provides it for everybody, and it's great. And different, there's other different outlets too, but this is really great that I have this opportunity. But we have like this is what I think media contributes to this. Mainstream media contributes to this so much. So what's the the uh, the temperature, I guess, or I can't think of the word, but the temperature of just the nation, the United States right now is in right now. You know, we're at each other's throats, like literally. It doesn't make sense. We're not sitting down to have like. There's some people that sit down to dialect. Or, I'm sorry, some people sitting down and having dialogues and figuring things out and changing their mind, but it's becoming less and less popular to do that, and more popular to call somebody, give them a name. You're in this group. We don't want to hear from you. That's it. We're becoming less trusting of each other. Even in another article that I found, in the other article, this is a article that was published. A version of this was published in the Harvard Business Review in 2017. It's written by Paul Zach, and this one focuses on the neuroscience of trust and what it does. And I'm not gonna read the whole article to you, just like I didn't read that last article, but I will put the link down below in the description box if you want to take a quick look at it. This one is very, very good because now this one focuses more on the business environment, but it's not much different from a family, from interacting from your friends, different group, whatever group you're part of. It's still the same basic foundational theory, like, or teaching, like, that you need basic fundamental concept that can be applied to whether you're this is business environment, your family environment, group environment, whatever it is, it can be applied. So he starts off with a few things, but there's a couple parts of the article I want to really focus on. So if you scroll down, it says leaders of big businesses, CEOs understand the stakes, at least in principle, of the lack of trust and what it can do to their environment. I kind of rephrased that, and how it can cause their organization not to grow, right? But most have done little to increase trust, mainly because they aren't sure where to start. So then about a decade ago, in an effort to understand how company culture affects performance, he began measuring the brain activity of people while they work. The neuroscience experiments he ran reveal 8 ways that leaders can effectively create and manage a culture of trust. I'll describe those strategies and explain them, and I'll just quickly give you the title of them, and we'll look at that. But he looked at what's happening in the brain, right? And so one of the part when you look at here, and this is from back in 2001, he derived the mathematical relationship between trust and economic performance, and how trust creates and promotes growth in the economy, how distrust does the reverse. And so it's very interesting. So there's the eight different things that he broke it down to is show vulnerability, facilitate whole person growth, share information broadly, enable job crafting, give people discretion in how they do their work, and induce challenge stress, which are the 8 things right here that he broke down when it comes to businesses. But even if you just let's just look at vulnerability, because I think that one is applicable in so many different facets of life. Without the ability to be vulnerable to a certain extent, of course, there's different levels of vulnerability that needs to be applied to, whether you're at home or whether you're at work or, so. But, and also in the church, without that level, like this is focusing on that part, without that level of vulnerability, without the ability to do that, become more closed off. You feel like people know you less. They don't understand you. And so it goes back to what we were saying earlier, you become more isolated. Because, they're not going to understand me. So it just leads to all these negative ways of thinking and living, and it can create we're very big right now talking about mental health and all that. Well, talk about a great negative towards your mental health, something that can negatively affect you. So let's look at the definition of trust, which I probably should have started with earlier. The definition of trust means assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. One in which confidence is placed. Why do I share the definition? It's very important that and I'm gonna place it here on the screen, but it's very important that you understand what trust means, because we could put our own definitions. No. Let's look at the word. This is what I'm talking about. And so, going into this, a lot of people think they equate trust to being gullible. Wrong. You've incorrectly used trust in a way. I don't even know how to say that the best way, but you haven't been using trust in the correct way. So yes, so trust does not equal gullible. Here's the thing with trust. You apply it. So remember the definition. It says, assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something, right? And so when it comes to applying trust to other ones, especially those that are close to you, um, it requires a little bit character on your part. You got to know, and what I mean by that is, you have to go in knowing, or if you don't know the person, then you're going in and you're making a decision to allow the person to prove to you that they are untrustworthy. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you go and put yourself in unsafe conditions. Like, come on, guys. We all have the ability to use logic, to think. If something seems dangerous, like a situation, we know to go the opposite way or to get away from it. And we all have that basic instinct. At least most of us should. Especially, I know women do. Um, like off rip. But what I'm saying is regular, which is most regular interactions, natural interactions with people. We go in, we first go in trusting the individual and allowing them to prove to you that they are untrustworthy in whatever you give them. When you give them this, let's say you're giving them a project, or you're asking them to do something for you, you come in there and you give them the exact things you expect from them. You let them know what you expect of them. Usually in that conversation, if you lay out what you expect, so most of the time people be like, well, I don't know about this, I don't know that. Right then and there, hey, maybe this person is not the right person for whatever you're trying to instill on them, whatever project you're trying to give them. When it comes into relationships, you this is not a popular thing, but this is something. I mean, the Bible doesn't talk much about dating and all that, but there's different principles that we can strip from, like extract from the Bible, and we can apply it to that part. But you go on dates with this person. That doesn't mean you sleep with them. That doesn't mean you any physical intimacy, which is harder these days because of Tinder and the way the culture is going, and the freedom of women's rights movements and things like that. Um, but you, the best way for the most healthiest way for most people that desire not to be hurt by others and to also build your ability to trust others is by going in and having standards or character that you go by, and then seeing whether that person meets that standard. Now, I'm not talking about high value men and all that talk. I'm not going into that jazz. I'm just talking about someone who is trustworthy. Someone that that's not going to hurt you or intentionally try to hurt you. But it takes time. You got to talk to people. You got to figure them out. You got to get them in different environments, around your friends, around close family, whatever it is. But that's the only way you'll be able to determine if you can trust this person or not. That's just the only way. Is through different interactions. Think about it. Let's take down like if you look at the greatest countries. Let's look at United States. This was one of the greatest countries for a long time. Why? I started off earlier. I mentioned it earlier because they started off trust on this Declaration of Independence, this document, the Constitution. What is, like, they signed their names on this paper, but they trusted each other. Each individual trusted that they would follow this, and so this nation was built off of trust in a document. Was there crime involved over the last 200 odd years, whatever, or 300 years? No, yeah, 200 whatever years since the country's been established? Yes. You know why? Because there's people like me, like you, in this country. Human beings. That's just what we do. Is there's certain amount of human beings that are not able to deny themselves of committing a crime, a horrendous crime like murder or rape or whatever it be, and so they do that. But that's why we have these established laws for these, for these instances when this appears. But for the most part, this lack of trust and this growth, the growth of fear and selling fear and doing all these different things, like it's tearing us apart and it's really destroying the country. Great countries are made of great families. Great countries are like the fabric of a great country are great families. So if you look at the found it like the found the family, you know, mother, dad, or mother, father, son, daughter, whatever. It's create like what creates that family. What's in that family. It starts off with the heads of that family, so the father and the mother coming together, trusting each other, applying trust to their children. So now they have a culture of trust, but also learning how to apply trust to others, understanding boundaries, understanding that you have to have respect and character for yourself, and then apply that same standard character, respect to others, and expect it. And if they don't meet that criteria, they don't meet that expectation, then you know from that, okay, this person is here for now. It's because some people, we grow, we change. And so over time, that person may have to earn more of your trust. But that doesn't mean you totally just not trust them, or you just understand, okay, they can't be trusted with this right now. They only could be trusted with this because their maturity level is here. But this is the process. It starts in the family. Then let's take it to the church. Now, I mentioned a few scriptures earlier. You cannot confess your sins. In James 5:16, it calls us to confess our sins to each other. How can you confess a sin to somebody that you don't trust? Who are you? How are you gonna tell somebody your things that you're struggling with? Maybe a mistake you made, an evil thought you had, if you can't trust them. It's impossible. Then in Galatians 6:2, it talks about spur one another on. How can you encourage or spur somebody on if you don't trust them? How can you trust what that if somebody's trying to spur you on? How can you trust what they're saying is true if you haven't if you don't want to trust anybody? If you don't want to apply that trust? People can encourage you all day, all night, but the trust, it won't seep in. It won't go in. It won't do nothing for you because you don't trust them. Let's go even further. Now we took it from the family. Now let's take it personal. You will not. Now this is for specifically those that believe in God and consider themselves Christian disciples or want to be a Christian. You will not last as a Christian unless you make conscious choice. Unless you make a conscious choice to trust other people. Think about it. Ultimately, how can you say you trust God but not trust the people that you can physically see standing, walking, talking around you? But God is an invisible being and you trust him. Make that make sense. It's impossible. But yet all of the scriptures say, hey, trust God, trust God, trust God. And I'm telling you, if you look at that, how can you trust? It says in Jesus was talking, he said, how can you or I don't know if it was Jesus, but it was a quote. Scriptures and people speaking is mixing up in my head right now. But if it is a scripture, I'll put it here. But it talks about this quote or the scripture. It talks about, hey, how can you love God but not love those that you can see? How can you say, hey, I'm a good person. I do all this. I do all that. But I'm good because, like, none of it makes sense. If you think about it, if you break it down all the way to its foundation, trust requires action. 1 Corinthians 13 says, love always trust. And then it says also, God is love, which is very interesting. God placed you in the situation that you're in. He placed you in the environment that you're in, not so you can just get stuck, not so you can be woe is me, and not so you can go into these negative places of thinking where you're like, no, I can't trust nobody. But he placed us in that situation for a reason. If you break it all the way down, that's that it comes down to a decision. A decision to start trusting others the same way you would want others to trust you. Now, you may have this issue. You may project your lack of trusting others because you don't even trust yourself. There's a lot of times people project certain insecurities that they have of themselves onto others. And if that is who you are and you're like, man, that's me. I just don't really trust myself. I don't trust my own word. You know what's great? You can start right now. You can say, I'm going to make a decision to keep my word. And through keeping my word to myself, I'm going to build trust with myself. And that will like the byproduct of that is trusting others. It's just going to happen. I promise you. The way you treat yourself is the way you will treat others. You always hear the saying, hurt people hurt people. This is the same concept. Treat yourself the way you want to be trusted. I think I'm done with my little rant. But this is the importance of trust. Trust is so important. Anyway, let's jump into another thing, right? So I was listening to this concept of the man. I was talking to a good friend of mine's, and we all have this concept of the man, the boogeyman, especially in the black culture here in America. And for a lot of us, it's put an invisible ceiling onto us, keeping us from growing, keeping us from going after things, keeping us from achieving and becoming, or really becoming a better, greater man, becoming our full potential of ourselves. Think about this. Where is the man? Who is the man? Is it a white person? The white person across the street? Or the one next to you in your apartment building? Or the one you work with? Is it that man? Is it that white man? Or woman? Whatever the way you look at it. Who is this man? Is it the government? Guys, if you look at your situation, let me actually share my parents and how I'm even here saying this to you, right? My parents are Haitian. They were born in Haiti. They came here because my grandpa came. We were living in New York first, but he came. Then my dad and my mom, and then the rest of my like my uncle and all that. They came. Why did they leave Haiti? Because they seen the opportunity of coming here and being able to build something for yourself, create something for yourself, create a legacy. They didn't have this concept of the man, so I didn't grow up with it. So my dad instilled that same thing into me. He expected me to do great things, to do better than him. Always. That was his things that you're going to do. Not you got to, but it was like you're going to. He was always encouraging me, always pushing me, always helping me to do better. I remember even when I graduated with my engineering degree a few years ago, he said, "All right, now business ownership." What? Always pushing me, always encouraging me. But he never, it's not like they were blind to racism and stuff, like certain prejudices that existed. Really, it was prejudices because, nobody ever touched them or anything like that here in America. But they did experience certain prejudices. I don't even know if that's a word. But they did experience prejudice here in America. But what's interesting also is, this is a side note, when we first moved from New York to Florida, their best friends were white, And so it's interesting, but they experienced prejudice not just from white people, but from all different cultures. I remember in high school, Haitians used to be butt of the butt of the joke, basically. You know, like if you were Haitian, you were basically laughed at. Like, you're Haitian? I remember I used to hide. I was so afraid. I remember oh man, when was it? It was 10th grade maybe. I don't even remember. But one of my good friends at the time, he was half Jamaican, half Haitian. And I remember when he told me that, and then I started telling people that when they would ask me, just so I wouldn't be made fun of. You're probably like, look, you're shameful. You're disgrace. I mean, I'll take it. At that time, I was looking to survive. But anyways, I digress. But the whole point of it is, why I bring that up is because I didn't have this concept of the man. I didn't have this invisible ceiling. And there's no doubt in my mind I could do whatever I want. The only person that could stop me, or thing, or force that can stop me, in my belief, is God. And if He's like, hey, you're not going this way, you're going this way, there's nothing I can do about it. He created me. You know what I mean? If He has a certain direction, and some people believe in that there isn't free will. I don't believe that, because the Bible says we have free will. But yeah, that's the only force that I believe can stop me. As long as I'm fighting to do good, right? Because then if I'm trying to do crime and stuff like that, then of course it's cops and all that, and laws and all that established for criminals. The concept of the man, the boogeyman, this invisible man, the government, whatever the way you see it, is stopping you. If you really believe in it, it's stopping you from really growing and becoming the individual you are meant to become. Do you hear me? You're placing yourself in a victim state, and as a victim, you're handing the power over from you to that invisible thing. Let's take the concept it kind of goes into this thing that a lot of religious people do now. Is like, oh, the devil, oh, the devil, the devil. No, don't get me wrong. The devil has been around for a while. He's Lucifer. I mean, come on. He was the morning star. He was God's, like, one of God's top angels at one point, So I get it. But I truly believe, like in the scriptures in Ephesians, it talks about, don't give the devil a foothold, like by going to sleep angry. Wait, so you mean if I don't go to sleep angry, I don't give the devil a foothold? And then it says somewhere else that he's like a lion waiting to devour. He's like a lion prowling around waiting to devour somebody, a Christian, or somebody that believes, like anybody really. But this is talking to Christians in that scripture when it was written. It was talking to believers, and it was like, hey, be careful, keep watch. He's prowling around like a lion, looking to devour. And so you think about that, it's like, whoa. But you have to put yourself in a position to be devoured. You have to put yourself in a position for him to have for him or her, whatever it is, to have a foothold. I think it's him, because if you look at the masculine tense in the Greek word, it's masculine tense, I should say. It is a him. Anyway, blah blah blah. I digress. The whole point of it is, you have the power. God has created us to basically be able to do whatever we put our minds to whatever we work at, whether it's good or bad. It could work both ways. You want to apply it to something good that's not going to harm others around you and yourself, but He's given us that ability. Please, especially my people here in America, my black people, please do not allow this thing to engulf your mind, and you might say, oh, how did that conversation come up? Why are you even talking about it now? I mean, that's like, you look at media, especially since the George Floyd thing, is black versus white versus black, all these things, left versus right, when it comes to politics, all these ways of dividing us and helping us, and like kind of social socially engineering us to focus on stuff that some aspects are true, but then adding all this other stuff on top of it. This is not the way you're going to personally help yourself to grow. If you focus on these things, you're going to have difficulty achieving your goals and becoming the person that you were called to be. I know you seen that lob of spit that just came out. But this is not going to help focusing on these things. So what's my call to action? My call to action is to focus on you. Don't focus on this boogeyman, the man, the government, whatever it is that you feel like is holding you down. Focus on you. What is it in your life? What baby steps can you take so you can become who you're trying to be? What ways do you need to change your mentality to become who you need to be? Who are the people that you need around you to become who you need to be? Maybe you're stuck in a rut. You know, one of my neighbors growing up, they went through hell, you know, during the pandemic. She lost her husband. She was very nice to me growing up. Me and my sister, my little brother, and my whole family. But she lost her husband, and then during right before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, she lost her two of her oldest kids to drugs. And that's like, it's hard to see. Like, how do you get back out of that? So I don't even know. Like, I could sit here like, I mean, the only thing I could think of is a great church who's founded on the Bible, really loving up on this, you know, my neighbor, and really pushing her. And she's not my neighbor anymore, but like encouraging her, you know, like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, it blows my mind, you know. But how can we avoid even getting there? Like being like, you know, her son or her daughter that took they didn't take their life intentionally, but how do we stop ourselves from going down into the deepest pits of hell while we're alive? You know, in the first episode, I talked about the loss of the concept of heaven, and how you know, there's a guy, Sadhguru, also, who he doesn't believe in any God or anything like that, but he talks about that. Like, people have lost the concept of heaven in their mind, and so they're going to drugs and they're trying to have as much pleasure as they can while they're here on earth, because they're like, oh, there is no heaven. But like, they experience, I mean, to be on drugs in that way without control, and this happened to my cousin last year. You know, died on drugs. And you know, how do you stop from going down to those deepest pits of hell in your own life? How do you experience a piece of heaven while you're living in this crazy world that we live in? It starts with you. It starts with making the decision. If you believe in God and you're like, you know, and you're like, well, how do I do that? You could always email me or message or comment below, and I'll give you more information on the ways you can do it biblically, like things you can follow, people you can reach out to study with you, depending on the city that you're in, and studying with the Bible. But those that don't believe, it still starts with you. You know, if you look at Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life, I definitely recommend that book. I definitely recommend his podcast and his videos, because it just started, like, he'll say simply, like, start with making your bed in the morning. Accomplish that, and start building from there. Remove this concept of the boogeyman. Start taking control of your life, because you can. You have the ability. Trust me. I have the demons too. I have the thoughts. I have all of that. But you can experience a piece of heaven while you're here. Of this heaven that this Bible talks about. Whether you believe or not, we all have an idea of what heaven is supposed to be like, right? Or what we used to have. If we don't, and if you're an atheist, you're probably like, I've never had it. But you know what peace is. You have an idea what is peaceful to you. Hopefully, it's something that doesn't harm others. But we can create these heavens. Like we can create this sense of heaven while we're alive, even with all the turmoil and everything, because it starts with you. It starts with maturing and changing your character. It just starts with one step, making the decision to, okay, I want to grow. I want to be the best version of me. It is possible because I don't have no invisible ceilings. I'm the only person that can stop me. And from there, you move on. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you for checking out this episode. If you love what you watched, you love what you heard, please share with a friend. Comment below, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.